Okay, we are now joined by somebody that does not need an introduction, but I'll give one anyway. Brady Quinn, former Notre Dame quarterback, current Fox Sports college football analyst. Thanks for joining us on Wake Up the Echoes. I have a million things I could ask you, but I think let's just start with some X's and O's and talk Notre Dame because this is about as good as it gets, Brady, and we'll get to some of the games you played in. 4 games into the season, they got Ohio State coming in just through the first 4 games. What have you seen from Notre Dame? How impressed are you, and how good can this team be?
Yeah, well, first off, Tony, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. I feel like this has kind of been a long time coming. First 4 games. I'll start off by just, talking about being over in Ireland on the field and really seeing the team. And it wasn't so much about the opponent who they're going up against. To me, it was just like passing the eye test. I'm fortunate enough to work in a job where we travel throughout the country. You can see some of the best teams in college football. And the one thing that you can always say is you can tell right away if a team doesn't have the depth, doesn't have that, like pass that eye test, as far as when they get off the bus, do they look the part? Notre Dame looks the part. This is the most physically impressive team I have seen, like during my lifetime. Now, granted, I wasn't there in the 1988 national championship team or early off in the 90s, but as far as the teams that I was a part of in Notre Dame since those, through those years, this is the most physically impressive team. They're big. They're deep. Their skill positions are fast. They're long. They're athletic. There's so many things where you kind of go out there and look for the way they move, the way they look, the depth that they have behind the position. Notre Dame's got all of that. They can go up against anyone with that. And then obviously the biggest factor is Sam Hartman at quarterback. They've now got a quarterback who I think not only can be a good decision maker with all the experience being a 6-year quarterback, but it's the downfield passing game that opens up. It's the playmakers at the wide receiver position that, I think last year highlighting Michael Mayer was awesome in the run game, but now you've got all of that where you don't have Mayer, but you got the wide receivers, the passing game. Holden Stays has come along kind of as that next tight end. I think when you watch the impact he's had, the O-line, all those things, they've been there. So that was kind of like the last missing piece, if you will. And this team, I think through the first 4 games, has proven themselves to be able to win in a variety of ways. And I love their chances this week. I love their chances the rest of the season. I said this after week 0, after they beat Navy, to our Big Noon Kickoff crew. I said, they're going to be a playoff team. Like that's how good I feel about where Notre Dame is right now. They obviously have to get through the schedule, which is a tough one. But the way things stack up right now, this is a playoff team in my eyes.
Help me understand then this week how they stack up against Ohio State. Ohio State's been playing games kind of at similar times, so I haven't seen as much film. I know it's your job to know how good Ohio State is and how they stack up. From my standpoint, at least in years past, I'd be really concerned about how Notre Dame maybe is able to match up in the secondary, but I think this is the best Notre Dame secondary that we've seen in a while. So from your vantage point, where do they stack up well against Ohio State? And if you're going into this game, where do you have to be on the lookout for maybe the Buckeyes to have a slight edge?
Yeah, so I think the areas of concern where you look at, like, hey, maybe where will Ohio State have a little advantage, or do they have more experienced players? Obviously, the wide receiver position is one when you've got a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka as well, Julian Fleming. There's a ton of speed, ton of playmakers. Carnell Tate is a very highly touted true freshman. You saw a little more burn time last week. You really can't afford to give up any big plays. Fortunately, Notre Dame's been extremely good and not giving up big plays this season. But, Ben Morrison, obviously Cam Hart, those guys, the entire secondary, those guys are going to be tested. And there's going to be times where you can't double up on Marvin Harrison Jr. You're going to have to be singled up on him, and you're going to have to live with that decision and live with those plays. The biggest thing from watching Ohio State, though, and we really, saw kind of this quarterback battle between Kyle McCord and Devin Brown play itself out. McCord ultimately is named starter, played his best football last week versus Western Kentucky, but it's been shaky at times. And, he's been a little inconsistent, especially versus pressure. The offensive line play has not been great. They had to replace both tackles. They kind of struggled there early on versus Indiana in Bloomington. They've showed some weaknesses there too. So the Notre Dame pass rush, I think, can get after it. Pressure can be one of those, I guess, trump cards in your back pocket if you want to try to bring it out versus Kyle McCord. Notre Dame's done a lot of that lately. So that's going to be interesting to see how that matchup plays out. It still starts with stopping the run, though. And that's where you can't afford to allow the pressure to be taken off of Kyle McCord by allowing them to have success on first, second down, allowing the running back stable of backs to get going. Mayan Williams is a load at running back. Travion Henderson's got to step on him. They've got a stable of backs, too, there at Ohio State. You got to be keyed in on. And then lastly, Cade Stover. He, to me, is the X factor for Ohio State on offense, and Notre Dame's really got to know where he's at. He's your traditional wide tight end. He's good at blocking at the point of attack, but he can stretch the field and make some plays down the field, in particular down in the red zone. So they're going to have to be good on him, too. All the wide receivers get the attention. It's going to be Cade Stover that we got to be careful about, too, when talking about Notre Dame's defense. And then on the flip side, Ohio State's very talented in their secondary as far as their ability to match up with wide receivers. Guys are going to have to make contested catches. Sam's going to have to get comfortable throwing to guys who aren't running wide open, like Tobias Merriweather last week or Chris Tyree last week. Like, that's not going to be the case. I have a hard time believing there's going to be blown coverages or guys are going to be able to blow by some of these athletes that Ohio State has in the secondary. And then the last thing I'd say is, as far as the protection goes, the interior of our offensive line, in particular, our two guards, not as experienced, obviously. That's where Ohio State's really good. They're very good up front on the defensive line. That's a group that can get after it, can get pressure with four. Our offensive line is going to have to play our best game of football to date. I would argue they're really their best game all year long with the front that they're going up against. USC will test them as well later on this year, the way they look so far. But to me, Ohio State is probably the most physical, probably the best up front they're going to face this entire season.
I want to circle back to Sam and kind of ask the question from more of a big picture standpoint, from what it means to be the Notre Dame quarterback and just how he's handled things so far this year. You pointed out how the receivers have stepped up. I think that's a product a little bit of Sam kind of maybe elevating everyone's play around him. Just in 4 games, and he's looked so sharp, he's handled everything. This will be his biggest test of the year. But help me understand kind of what it means to be the Notre Dame quarterback going into a big game and how impressed you've been with not only his performance, but his leadership in what's a really demanding position in all of college football.
I think the good thing for him is he already had 5 years, playing this elsewhere. And it wasn't like he wasn't on the national stage to a degree. I mean, he allowed Wake Forest to be competitive. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason why he was a target and a guy that, we all wanted to come to Notre Dame because of the success that he had during his time in the ACC playing at Wake. So I think that played a huge role in helping him transition into being the quarterback at Notre Dame, in part because of just his general maturity, the leadership skills that he built up over his time there at Wake. And also not like making that jump. I think when you look at a quarterback who comes from high school to then Notre Dame, or I guess my experience and how I'd relate is it's a whole different animal. I mean, you're adapting to class and school and college and all these things that you have on your plate that you're trying to manage, let alone be in that national spotlight. So I think his experience, his age, his maturity, all those things have been a huge benefit to him. And being able to really just focus on football and at a point in time where that's all he really wants to do. So it's been awesome to watch him, the way he's handled it. He's kind of very gracefully stepped into a position. And I know it's only for a year's time, but I think he's done a good job embodying everything that you'd hope for out of a Notre Dame quarterback in the way he conducts himself. Obviously, the play on the field speaks for himself, but handling it all, handling the media, handling being in the spotlight as a leader, and how he talks about his teammates, talks about the coaching staff. I really don't think you could ask for much more.
This is going to be a fun week because we can, I think, debate where this game and this matchup maybe rank all time in Notre Dame meetings. I'll go with my lifetime. I think back to 2005 as this having a chance to be the most meaningful game on this campus in 18 years. I think you could have made a case for Clemson a couple of years ago, but there were no fans in 2020, so I don't think it quite hit the same way. Georgia, it was maybe a little early in that Georgia run in 17, so I throw that out. I think it's the biggest game on campus in 18 years. What do you remember about that week leading up to the game? And if you could give a player advice or a coach advice for how to kind of manage the emotions and stay in the right mindset, what do you have to do? Because this is going to be a different week the way it feels around campus.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would argue that USC in a few weeks, when we win, when Notre Dame wins this game,
they win, okay.
that will be the biggest since 2005. USC, I think, will be probably higher ranked at that point based on the games they will play. Obviously, Notre Dame will continue to improve in their ranking. So I think that will be the biggest, ironically enough, and it's 2005 was USC. It's once again here in 2023 USC. This one will be big, and I just think the feeling of it's a little bit different. I mean, back then in 2005, you had arguably one of the greatest dynasties in college football history. You had a team that had won 2 in a row, trying to win 3 in a row. multiple Heisman winners on their team, multiple first-round picks on their team. It was just a different animal, and we were at a point, in our first year with Charlie Weiss where we felt like we had to execute and play a certain style in order to give ourselves a chance to win. And, as far as the hype leading up to it, I mean, it doesn't get much more hyped up going into that game. I mean, the campus was buzzing, just everything that week, the pep rallies, everything else. I mean, we had to move the pep rally to the stadium. It was so big, and that whole thing was filled half up with 40,000 people. It's just thinking back to that, it's hard to, put it into perspective only because of, how unique that the opponent was and the rivalry and the history behind it. But even that season for us being the first year with Charlie Weiss and there being so much unknown, coming off of what was a 500 year before after the bowl game and the firing of Ty Willingham, there were so many things that were unknown. And we really weren't sure until we beat Pitt on the road, top 25 ranked team. We beat Michigan at home, on the road at their place in the Big House, top 10 ranked team, I think, at that point. And it was like this momentum started to build. And so it was a little different where I feel like Notre Dame's at such a good place now, based on how the last, 5-6 years have gone. And this is an Ohio State team that I think has some questions about them. They think they're the par. They think they can get back on top of the Big Ten. I'm not so sure. I think there's a lot of people who want to believe that are Buckeyes fans, but are doubting it right now.
You said when they win. I'll start using that terminology throughout the week. When they win this week, what do you think that will do for kind of the national perception of this Notre Dame team? I get the sense like everyone from a national standpoint is kind of this is the litmus test, right? It's kind of a wait and see. When they win, what will the takeaway be nationwide, and how will Notre Dame be viewed?
This is a legit college football playoff contender. And that's what I've said. I've always believed that. I've seen them up front, close and personal. I can tell you what Sam's bringing to the table as a quarterback, how that relates to what we already have in a running game, what we already have in a defense, and even a kicker for that matter, right? Like we've got a kicker we're going to rely on and trust in those big positions. So, I mean, people take it for granted all the time, but you go look at Kansas State getting upset by Missouri, like it comes down to a kick sometimes, like it did this past week. So I think it's going to change a little bit of the questions that the national narrative is about Notre Dame. Like, hey, they're really good, but they're not maybe in that top tier. It's like, no. This is a top tier team. Mm-hmm. Like this year, this is a top tier team. We're looking at Bama struggling, Clemson struggling. You look at some of these other teams out there, they don't look quite the same. And this is a big time opportunity, I think, for Notre Dame based on all the things that we have right now. So when we win, and that's how you got to talk to it, man. You got to speak it into, you got to manifest this, speak it into existence. But it's going to be a tough game. There's no doubt about it. But I think we match up extremely well. And again, Sam gives us a really good shot. I think if you're looking at the most experienced, most important position where you want to excel at, well, that's where we excel, especially in this matchup.
I'm going to ask you an off-the-wall question here, quick U-turn. When you were on campus, did you dine at the dining halls?
Of course.
Okay. This is a debate we're having with every former guest. Just speak your truth to me. Are you a North or a South dining hall guy?
South. Now, this is an easy answer for me because we had study hall right across from South Dining Hall. So I'd get done with practice. I'd always start watching film of that practice to kind of grade it myself and then look at the next day's cut-ups and things we had. And because this started when I was a freshman. And so I'm very habitual, as far as how I'd go about my routine. So because we had study hall kind of late, like I would rush, and South was the only one open. So I'd go in, grab some food quick, scarf that down, then rush into study hall. So I actually lived in Zom my first 2 years. So by way of like proximity, I would go to North Dining Hall a decent amount. I actually thought it was a little like nicer, like dining experience.
That's the point of the making here every week.
I frequented South Dining Hall more often. And that's kind of like where me and the fellas typically all posted up because of study hall. That was kind of ingrained in us. But now, like, again, I don't know. I haven't been back in a while, so I'd be curious to see if that opinion still holds.
North has been remodeled. I'm a North guy, but I'm currently being outscored here 2-1 amongst our guests now have voted for South. One more kind of off-the-wall question. This week, it's Notre Dame, Ohio State. Is that jersey going to make a return appearance anywhere around the Quinn family? Is it somewhere we can see? What's going to happen this week with that jersey?
No, I mean, that's the funny thing is like my sister will root for Notre Dame from here on out. AJ was the only reason she even rooted for Ohio State. Even in that instance, that I think going back on it, she probably wishes that she just would have worn a Notre Dame jersey at that point. But no, that thing was probably either, I don't know if it was like framed or where it was, but it's at my mom's house somewhere. but that will not be coming back out. That thing stays in there, and AJ and the rest of the Ohio State fan base can have that half their jersey.
Good to know. Last one I've got is just, I can just tell talking to you, you're still very passionate about Notre Dame and the football program. Just kind of put into words, not just what a win would mean, but just what it's meant to kind of see the way the program has progressed here under Marcus Freeman in his second year, and just what your weekends are like when you watch Notre Dame. What does it feel like the further you get removed from being quarterback? It doesn't seem like you're necessarily further removed emotionally from caring about how this program looks. What does Notre Dame football mean to you now?
When you sign to go to Notre Dame, you always talk about this 4 for 40. For me personally, it's always felt like a 4 for forever decision. In the sense of it echoes in the generations that you impact past you. And you don't realize it when you first go and you first get there, and between how tough the academics are and the schedule and obviously football and how tough the schedule is, playing there, you really don't have time to appreciate it and truly understand how big it is, how amazing it is. And I think the further you get away and the further you experience this world, you realize how special and how unique Notre Dame is. And so I think my love for it only grows fonder because, I see young people continually make that decision to go there. And even though they're growing up in an era of social media and, different smartphones and all that kind of stuff, like we didn't have any of that when I was in college. And you feel like sometimes you can't relate. Like I feel like I know to their core who they are. That's that common bond that you have with so many that went before you, that go after you. And so I think for that reason, like it's just that natural connection that I love. And it's one of the reasons why, I started a collective to help out Notre Dame athletics. It's one of the reasons why I have a foundation that works with, veterans that we host there in the summertime at Notre Dame. I think it's a special place. And I've always felt blessed to have the opportunity to go there. I wish we could have won a national championship. Didn't work out. I don't have any eligibility left. So my thing is like, I try to help out in whatever way I can to help get Notre Dame back in that position to do that. And so it's hard to put into words. It really is. Cause I think it's bigger than that. It's like a spiritual thing. And so I think you got to feel it. And usually when you're on campus there, everyone walks away feeling the spirit.
All right, Brady, it's time for our From the Irish segment where a listener submits a question. It's presented by TireRack.com. Here it is. It's from Noah in Jacksonville. Pretty straightforward question, but I think an interesting one. He says, whose hair is better when they were at Notre Dame? Brady Quinn's or Sam Hartman's? The floor is yours.
Well, his facial hair is definitely better because I could not grow a beard. So I will definitely give him the win on that. But he doesn't have the same flow bucket I have. So I'm sorry, man. Like I can't give him credit there, but I'll give him the win on the facial hair, no doubt. He looks like a mountain man. So that's a good look. It's a good look especially for a leader. I feel like there's some wisdom that comes along with that beard. And it makes him look a little older, but hell, I mean, he's a 6-year quarterback. It's like you're not going to find many 6-year players after this COVID eligibility runs out.
So you're willing to concede the facial hair, but not the lettuce on top.
No chance. No chance.
That's a good, confident answer. You know what? I'll side with you. I think Brady Quinn wins that the entire way. Brady Quinn, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate, obviously, everything you do for Notre Dame, but, of course, your coverage on Fox is great. Looking forward to, we'll say it, when they win this Saturday.
Yeah, that's right. When they win. So get ready for it. Beat the Buckeyes. Go Irish. Tony, thanks for having me on. It's been fun.
Talk to you later.